Well, in this video, we're going to talk about something very important, something essential, if you will, something you need to master. And it's not that hard. And that is mixing neutrals, or desaturated colors if you prefer. My name is Steve Mitchell. This is my studio partner and assistant Reese. We're going to take you into some neutral ground today, and I think you're going to love it. If you're new here, my name is Steve. I'm a watercolor painter and artist, and we talk about mostly watercolor here, watercolor gouache, and a few other things. And today we are going to look at mixing neutrals. Now, folks, mixing neutrals is probably one of the most important color theory, color mixing skills that you will learn. It's so incredibly important. If you're a beginner, you have to know, and you must know, that painting colors just right out of the tube, that can happen, but you need to learn to mix neutrals. And what we're talking about when we talk about neutrals, we're talking about desaturating color. That is making it less vibrant, more grade, neutral. And neutrals can be very beautiful. Today we're going to review my 6-color set from MaimeriBlu. It's just a good basic set to demonstrate this principle with. But the principles I'm going to talk about today can apply to any type palette. And I had a video where I introduced this set if you want to go see it. As I introduce these colors, as I review them again, I'll talk about where you might get a similar color or what a similar color is that you may already have. But these colors very well represent what you'll run into with the various hues in the spectrum and how to desaturate them. So important. 6 colors. Designed this set mainly for landscape, but it could be used for other things. It has a selection of 4 what I would call earthy colors: Yellow Ocher, Dragon's Blood, Hooker's Green, and Indigo, and 2 vibrant colors, Quinacridone Lake and Turquoise. Links for this will be below. Okay, so let's look at these colors again. Indigo is a blue. It's sort of a earthy, kind of a gray blue, but it's similar to Payne's Gray, only a little bluer, I would say. There are brands out there that have Payne's Gray that are very similar to this, but it definitely is a blue cast. The next is Phthalo Turquoise. You might have a cyan in your collection of colors that would be similar, or you might just have some other form of turquoise. Hooker's Green is a very earthy, warmish, but grayed down green, very useful for landscape. Quinacridone Lake is a very magenta-like color. It's a cool red, which is extremely useful in mixing. Dragon's Blood. You'll probably notice right away the similarity to this and red iron oxide or burnt sienna. You have those colors, they're going to be very similar to this, but this is Dragon's Blood. This is one of my favorite, probably, Maimeri colors. And then finally, Yellow Ocher. Very earthy, warm yellow. That's what we're going to work with today, and we're going to talk about mixing neutrals. Or, again, if you're a beginner, desaturated colors. So important, can't be overstressed. Just to emphasize the importance, just take a look at paintings, not only by myself, but by a number of really great artists out there, and just take note of how much of their painting is actually desaturated or neutral. Joseph Zbukvich is a very good example. I mean, there really are tons of great examples. Andy Evanson, excellent example. Some paintings of my own are good examples. Unless you paint really vibrant flowers or almost design-oriented type paintings, rarely will you paint something with a color right out of the tube. You're going to need to augment it somehow. Not just to change hues, but to make the hues a little more subdued. It's just a way of making them look more natural. All right, let's take a look at Indigo first. And what I'm going to do is just kind of demonstrate what you can do with it here on my Butcher Tray palette. And then when we find some really interesting mixes, I'm going to add them in the column below. Indigo is the color that they generally make blue jeans out of. Generally, if you think of blue jeans, most of them are dyed with indigo. So being a blue, the first thing to know about mixing complements is complements are the same thing as opposites. What is the opposite of blue? Well, if you're a total newbie to color theory, the opposite of blue is orange. Again, if you're just very unfamiliar with complements, just look at a color wheel. You don't need to buy a color wheel. Just go online and you'll see plenty of them. A complementary color is going to be an opposite or opposite on the color wheel. So if you have blue, the complement of blue is orange. The complement of purple or violet is yellow. The complement of red is green. So those are your basic primary opposites or complements. So if you need to quiz yourself on complements or opposites, just pull up a color wheel and remind yourself. Opposites neutralize each other. But as we mix, there's also the concept of near complements. A near complement will not perfectly gray each other out. It will still skew one way or the other. And to me, that's where the real beauty of neutrals are. All right, so back to our indigo. Being a blue, the complement of blue is orange. And the orange in this palette is dragon's blood. It's a rusty color, but it's an orange. And this is probably, in this selection of colors, this is probably the neutral I use the most. Let's get as neutral a gray here as we can. These two neutralize each other out very well. And there you have a fairly neutral gray. What I love, though, about mixing your own neutrals is how easy it is with just a stroke of the brush to bend the mixture back and forth. This makes a really great sort of brown or umber. If you bend the mixture towards dragon's blood, I'm sorry, I've been cutting some of that off. This is dragon's blood over here. It's the color that's very much like burnt sienna. All right, so let's put that down. Here's our warm gray, neutral. Nice umber color. And every one of these mixes that I'm showing you, you can bend further to extremes or in almost infinite increments. This one is sort of just coming off the indigo, still fairly a cool gray, warmer. Well, maybe you want dragon's blood or burnt sienna, but only want to subdue it a little. You reach for your complement. Now I have a really nice brown. Less rusty color, and in landscape that would be and is very useful. How far you want to go with it is totally up to you. This would be nearly back to full strength dragon's blood, but just backing off a little bit so it's not quite so intense. And that's indigo mixed with dragon's blood. Very nice complements. Probably the best perfect complement in this selection of colors. If you're wondering what brush I'm using, this is a Princeton Neptune 1/4 inch flat. Very good brush. Very nice for swatching especially. All right, so what about Phthalo Turquoise? Phthalo Turquoise is a blue-green. Mostly blue. Well, the best complement is still going to be dragon's blood. And here we're talking about a near complement. But let's see what that does. So let's get some dragon's blood out here. Take a look. Let's pull over some Phthalo Turquoise. Let's try to get equal amounts in there as much as possible until we have, this is probably the most neutral that we have. And that's a very nice gray. That's, it kind of skews a little green. But this is what I'm talking about when I say near complements are really nice. They're really nice to work with. They give you some great colors. Let's go ahead and swatch this. And this top row, I guess, whoops, will be the closest to an absolute gray that we have out of that mixture. So here you can see with Phthalo Turquoise and dragon's blood, you can mix a fairly neutral gray. Also, it's warmer though. It's light green gray. Well, Phthalo Turquoise is a very intense color. So to paint with it, it is a beautiful color, but you're going to want to, at times, really reduce that down in intensity. And again, with complements, you can do that incrementally. So let's get a phthalo turquoise out here that's been desaturated into a nice neutral turquoise. Look at that. See, I love dusty looking turquoise colors. It's very beautiful, especially in landscape. Again, we can take that as intense or de-intensified as we want to. Get anything that's possible from here to here to here. All right, let's go the opposite way. Let's head down to the dragon's blood. But we're going to de-intensify it the way we did with indigo here, only we're going to use phthalo green this time, or phthalo turquoise. Very raw umberish. See how quickly, with a limited palette like this, of just 6 colors, you can easily have a raw umber in your palette. Once again, let's have a dragon's blood that's only slightly de-intensified. Yet another brown. That's really nice. So far, just gorgeous colors. And so far, very useful colors, especially in things like landscape. So to review, we've taken indigo and mixed it with dragon's blood, come up with some neat grays, or de-intensified color. We've taken phthalo turquoise with dragon's blood and done the same thing. All right, so what about hooker's green? Well, what's the opposite of green? That's red. So naturally, we're going to look at its neighbor, Quinacridone Lake, which is a cool red. Hooker's green is this very earthy, pretty natural looking green, I would say. You can see it's washed out there. Quinacridone Lake is sort of a purple leaning magenta. Really nice. One of the 2 really vibrant colors in this palette. Let's pull that over here with the green. Let's get our first color down, and again, I'm going to try to get as close to neutral as I can between the two. Let's see how neutral or gray we can get, and then we'll bend that color in opposite ways. And I'm splashing all over this. There's your gray, and it sort of is leaning purple, which is interesting. That probably just means because Quinacridone Lake is such a powerful pigment that it's just overpowering. Let's see if I can get more of the green in there to kill some of that. Because that's my first goal, is just to see how neutral I can get it. Very nice. We still have a very neutral gray here, but a little bit different character than these two. Now hooker's green's a pretty desaturated color as it is, but let's go ahead and desaturate it some more and bend it towards the green. We have a really interesting gray-green here. So that's bending it back towards the green. Well, let's bend it the other way. Let's go magenta, even more magenta than this. Or I should say Quinacridone Lake. I just think of Quinacridone Lake as a magenta. Such interesting colors you can make. And again, just to kind of reiterate, the power of this is the incremental nature of it. The way you can adjust just ever so slightly to go in different directions. I mean, if you want to take Quinacridone Lake, for instance, but make it a little more shadowy, but warm, keep it warmer at the same time without being too cool. Use primarily Quinacridone Lake in your mixture. Just add a little bit of that green. Look at that. Oh, that's just gorgeous. That is a gorgeous color. Very muted violet. Very nice. I've always said that limited palettes really have a lot of power, mainly because you don't have indecision paralysis in picking a color from a 36 or a 40 color palette. You know what your colors are, and if mixing can kind of become a rhythm, a habit. You know how to bend colors back and forth, but look at the power that you actually have. Limited color palettes can really aid you in efficient painting. You don't want to spend all your time saying, now what color should I make that out of my 100 color palette? And there's nothing wrong with having a 100 color palette, but my point is limiting your painting, the painting that you're doing, to a set number of colors so that you're drawing from that selection. All right, so let's go to Quinacridone Lake. Now we've already done these two. Let's take Quinacridone Lake and Phthalo Turquoise. This is going to be our first example of a near complement, or I should say a stronger example of a near complement, since there's a lot of blue in here. So we're going to end up with a lot of purples. But because there's green, we are going to end up with some desaturation. And I think it's going to be beautiful. So here's our Quin Lake. Let's get some turquoise over here. So just a really beautiful violet. And that's about as neutral. With just those two colors, that's about as neutral as you're going to get. Not real neutral, but you will notice it's not the most brilliant purple you might have. So if you're needing something, if you're needing a purple, it's a little more subdued, that's a good choice. It still retains a lot of the purple. Again, we can add a little more Quin Lake to that. Beautiful violet, still somewhat neutralized. And it's a great way to tone down the strength of this color. Here's a case where you might want to get one more color involved. So what if we took Phthalo Turquoise, okay, out here, Phthalo Turquoise, Quin Lake, and that's kind of mixed, added just a little bit of Yellow Ocher. So now we're turning this more green. What do we have? With the three color mix, we got something neutral. You see how quick and easy that was? Again, it's a mixture you can bend. Bend it towards the Quin Lake, bend it towards the turquoise, bend it towards the ochre. Just really, really powerful mixing. Let's just bend it towards the ochre since we introduced that as a third color in this mix. See what we get. Really nice, warm, gray brown. Fantastic. All right, now we're down to Dragon's Blood. We've already mixed that with Phthalo Turquoise and come up with some neat mixes. We've already mixed that with Indigo and come up with some neat mixes. What if we mix it with Hooker's Green? We did Hooker's Green and Quin Lake, but what if we did these two? Now these are both fairly warm, but because it's red and green or orange and green, it's another form of a near complement, not an absolute complement, but you're probably going to end up with some very warm brownish colors because there's nothing cool to cool them down. So this might be one of our best go-tos for browns or earth tones. So here's my best guess at a neutral, at a fully neutral color. As you can see, it's very brown. Let's go back more towards the Dragon's Blood. It gives us a nice, rich brown, red brown, but not as intense. The whole choice of earth tones here was one of the reasons I designed this set of colors the way I did. Among other things, but it's just a very useful palette. Did I say that already? In landscape, it's a very useful palette. I know, I get repetitive. But let's go backwards. Let's go over towards the green. And what do we have? Nice olive, really nice olive. You could do sort of an olive brown. Maybe not enough green in there for an olive brown. Yeah, that's an olive brown. Well, let's get a little more green yet involved. Just a little bit of that Dragon's Blood. And what have we got? Ah, there's your olive right there. Hooker's Green is a good portion of the way towards olive already, but this just really seals the deal. If you need a nice landscape olive, which I often do, look at that. So that's Dragon's Blood and Hooker's Green. Fantastic. All right, last but not least, yellow ochre. Look at that beautiful yellow. Nice earthy but vibrant yellow. Just some of that out here. Now, the closest thing we had to a complement is going to be Quin Lake, at least in this selection. That's leaning violet, but it's a lot of red in it too. So you don't have a perfect complement, but a near complement. But there's going to be some desaturation nevertheless. And I suspect it's going to be beautiful. So here's our yellow ochre. What's the closest we can get to a neutral? Is really just sort of a dusty yellow orange. But man, how useful that would be in a landscape. Just a very sandy kind of color. And, you know, honestly, we're getting sort of into just raw color mixing here rather than neutrals, but that's okay. Again, you know, the point to remember is that using neutrals is not about just using grays. Using desaturation in increments and degrees for really beautiful results. Let's bend that mixture a little more magenta. Ooh, boy, is that pretty. That is really pretty. That's a deep, sort of a dusty salmon color. Nice. Well, just like we did with this, the dragon's blood and the phthalo turquoise, which were not perfect complements, let's get a third color involved. Let's add a little bit of blue. Let's add the turquoise as our third color. And we should get and see a little bit more desaturation, and we do. Reason for that is because the blue in the turquoise is mixing with the red in the lake and creating a purple, which is your complement of yellow ochre. So here's very close to a gray, a very warm gray, though I could shift that, make it more cool gray if I added more of the turquoise. Just put it another way, I've already really said this, but the power and the fun of this is just how incrementally you can change your colors on the fly from such a limited selection of colors. Just dozens of colors at your hand. But you got to practice this. You got to practice this. This is why limited color palettes are powerful, because they're easier to get to know, and you can pull so many colors just on a whim without having to go through 20, 30, 40, 50 colors and decide which color you're going to use. All right, let's pull a little bit more turquoise in there. Let's refresh that yellow ochre. The yellow ochre and the turquoise are making sort of a olive green, which we've already seen that. Let's get the red in there. Okay, we really bent that red. Now I already have a color like that, so let's pull it back some more towards turquoise and cool it down. Maybe even more than that. Not really something you'd consider a derivative of yellow ochre, but again, it's so easy to bend these mixtures in different ways. All right, folks, I know I didn't do a painting this time, but this is extremely useful information that you need to practice. You need to be able to go to a color and say, oh, that's too intense. Immediately know where you're going to go to change that color. That's the power of color mixing. That's the skill you need to develop in color theory and in painting. Analysis paralysis, decision paralysis will kill you if you don't practice these color mixing ideas and exercises. Do this very thing. Take the colors you have on your palette, swatch them out, know where you want to go. And you forget, if you don't paint super often, you forget. So you sometimes have to warm up before painting and say, okay, here's the colors I'm going to use. Here's what I'm going to do if I need to subdue those colors or make some beautiful neutrals from those colors. Just set yourself on the right track. This is a great set. If you don't have it, you want to try it, practice with it. Thanks everyone for watching. I appreciate it. We'll see you in the next video. Bye-bye.